Okay, John, you can start with your 2-minute opening statement.
Well, thank you all for being here. I know the weather outside is a little inclement, but it's great that you're here and great for the people that are watching at home. My name is John Howe, that's Howe, and you can visit my website at howeforcongress.com. You know, I'm really excited about this debate because you're going to hear us from the heart. There's not going to be electronic devices up here or prepared statements. You're going to hear the candidates talk from the house, or from the heart. I grew up on a farm in Minnesota without running water. Worked for somebody else for 17 years of my life and started my own business and worked very hard for that. But my greatest accomplishment is my family. You know, I've got 3 wonderful kids, and my wife Lisa and I have been together since 1989. My son Jack is in ASU for engineering, and later on this year he'll be joining the Navy into the nuclear program for 6 years active and 2 years inactive. And my son David is looking for an Air Force nomination. And then it took me a while to talk to my wife in the last one, so we've got one in middle school. But the reason I'm running for Congress is I'm passionate about the U.S. national debt. You know, when Obama took office, we were $10 trillion in debt. And under his leadership, we went, you know, the debt has increased 77%. So now we're $18.8 trillion in debt. The last budget added another $900 billion to the debt. And so we have to get serious, and I think you need to send somebody to Washington, D.C. who's going to address those issues. And I think you need to make sure that you're taking somebody who has not only, I think everybody up here is going to say about the same thing, you know, we're just a couple degrees off on where we stand on issues, but somebody who's actually going to have the personal integrity to address those issues. And I can assure you, as a congressman, I'm going to address that issue. Now, I'm not going to run away from, you know, my experience, and I'll tell you, I was the mayor of Red Wing, and being mayor helped me be a better senator. I served in the Minnesota Senate one term, and being senator is going to help me be a better congressman. And I'll answer to any vote that I've taken, and certainly my name is in the phone book. Again, my name is John Howe. You can visit my website at howeforcongress.com. That's HOWEFOR Congress.com. Thank you.
Okay, David, you have 2 minutes for your opening statement.
My name is David Gerson. I'm a Jewish engineer from the proud blue-collar community of South St. Paul. I've got a bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering and a master's degree in industrial engineering, and I've spent a career in transformation, integration, and change management. And I'm running for Congress because we know that Washington is a well-oiled machine for the political elite, big business, big banks, big media, and big unions, and we will no longer accept the collusion between special interests and government. In 2014, I challenged a 6-term incumbent for the Republican Party endorsement because he wasn't representing us. And he won that endorsement by less than 3%. And because of the success of our grassroots movement, I am one of only 9 candidates for United States Congress, including Senator Mike Lee, to earn the prestigious Madison Project endorsement. I have put my career on hold and invested my life savings into this campaign because it is a cause for me. We the people will no longer accept the status quo. We are standing up to the giants in Washington, and we will defeat the Washington cartel. Thank you.
Gene, you have 2 minutes for your opening statement.
Oh, I am Gene Ruxico, running for Congress of the 2nd District. I believe I'm running because it's about time we have a vision. We need a vision of, I believe, what God wants done in this country. I believe it's not by mistake that the motto on our money is "In God We Trust." And it comes underneath where it says United States of America. And I believe that's for a reason, because in God we trust is the foundation of the United States of America. And the GOP, in my opinion, should be God over people. Because I believe if we're not going to have the motto, "In God we trust," and protect our freedoms and our liberties that God has so graciously bestowed upon us, that G is going to turn into government. In government we trust. And I believe, as our founding fathers have said, we need to dedicate ourselves, our lives, and what we do to preserve the values of our Judeo-Christian values and ethics. I believe we've forgotten Israel. I believe as Israel goes downhill, so will the United States. I believe God will take his blessing off of the United States as we forsake Israel. I have some posters out front showing how Israel, from 1967, Seven-Day War, has been retreating for the sake of peace. I believe that needs to be reversed. It should be Israel first. Israel should be the United States of the Middle East.
Jason, you have 2 minutes to make your opening statement.
Thanks, Glenn, and thanks to all of you, and especially thank you for this chair. I had surgery just a couple of weeks ago, and now the official campaign statement is it was a herniated disc, but as Steve Draskowski can attest, the real reason is the DFL's been on my back so long I had to get it fixed. I want to thank the candidates that spoke as well earlier, Steve and the great Senate candidate there. It's very, very important that these races do well, and we've got some great candidates. And I also want to thank all of you for coming tonight, and especially the work you do on the ground. Because without you, without the activists, without the delegates who take their time and go through the endorsement process, which I believe is key for the Republican Party. You see, the Democrats have circled the wagon in the 2nd District. They've circled the wagon for one very radical candidate. They're not even going to bother with the primary. We need a candidate who's endorsed and can go forward and win an election in November, a conservative who can win, and that's why I got in this race. Now, many of you know me from my years on the radio, but let me tell you in great Paul Harvey fashion the rest of the story. I grew up in a small family business. Lewis Motor Supply was in the automotive aftermarket. And some of you will relate to this, but after 55 years in business, after my granddad, my dad, and I had this business, the DOT came through and built a freeway through us. We went through something called eminent domain. And if you've ever had your property or your business condemned, what they define as public use and what they define as just compensation is something you've never seen before. And with all the talk about wind farms and zip rails down here, preserving the rights to property is a key to preserving freedom in Minnesota and America, and I intend to do that in Washington. So I'm very, very concerned about that. But I had to go out and get a second career. I got my undergraduate degree earlier, I finished my master's, and I got into broadcasting. So when people come up to me and say, Jason, we like what you say, we know where you stand, but how do we know you won't change when you go to Washington? I look back on the last 25 years of fighting the good fight, and I say, because I never have. Thank you very much.
Pam, you have 2 minutes for your opening statement.
Thank you so much for being here tonight. It's wonderful. And Jeff, thank you so much for all the work that you did putting this together. I have been calling hundreds of people and asking them, what are your concerns? And I've been hearing a common theme, actually many common themes. And one of the things I've heard is, Pam, I'm really frustrated. And there are others who say, I'm angry. And others, I don't have any hope that there's any possible way to change Washington, D.C. and the federal government. I have hope. And I'd like to share with you why I have hope and why I'm running for Congress. 5 of my first 6 years of life I spent in Latin America. My first language was Spanish. My family returned to the United States when I was 6 years old. I struggled, just struggled in school, unable to read until 5th grade. That year changed my life forever. I had a teacher who taught me to read. I gained 5 years in those short 9 months. I learned foundational lessons for life through that experience. 1, God answers prayer. 2, the importance of working hard and persevering in the face of a challenge. And 3, that there is always, always hope. So yes, I have hope. I am living the American dream, and I'm running because I want the people of the 2nd Congressional District, their children and grandchildren, to experience and live the American dream as well, and the opportunities I have enjoyed. I'm a certified public accountant, a former two-term state representative with a strong conservative and pro-life voting record. I live in the district and have for over 40 years, and I'm a deeply concerned mother of 3.
Darlene, 2 minutes for your opening statement.
Good evening, and thank you all for coming out here tonight. I really appreciate you hosting us. I'm Darlene Miller, and I grew up in the 2nd District on a farm in New Prague, and I was one of 8 children. And any of you who are on farms now or grew up on farms know that farming is very, very hard work. And I wasn't afraid of hard work then, and I'm certainly not afraid of it today. Although I always think, well, maybe we just did the hard work because our parents told us to do it, and we didn't question it at the time. We just plain did it. And I'm really happy to say I own a manufacturing company in Burnsville, Minnesota. I have owned it for over 20 years and located in the 2nd District. And I'm really, really proud of my employees. I treat them like family, and they have really helped us create our success. We took a company that had very old technology, old screw machines, if you've ever heard of those, and transformed it into a modern 21st century precision machining company. And I showed people through action how that could be done. And we all worked together and made that happen. And I'm running for Congress because I have real conservative values and real life experiences. And I truly believe we need to make a difference in what's happening today in Washington, D.C. I want to bring some of those business values to Congress, things like listening and implementing and taking risks and balancing a budget, most importantly. Thank you.
That completes opening statements. Now we'll get into a series of about 5 or 6 questions. Each candidate will have 30 seconds to respond to the question. We have lots of good questions. If you use less than 30 seconds, it would be appreciated. The first question is, and we'll start with John. I'll only read it once. If you want it repeated, I will. But the question is, do you intend to honor the endorsement process? John?
Well, what I've said before is if everybody else is going to abide by it, and you can guarantee me that no one else is going to enter the race, absolutely. But what we found, and it's interesting that I made that comment, that we've got people in the race now that say they're not going to abide by the endorsement. Now, I know Jason says it's a very important issue, but I think one of the reasons that he's very adamant about that is he doesn't live in the district. I just met this gentleman for the first time tonight, right on stage here, just a few seconds ago. So, I think the issues are too important right now, and my personal commitment too strong. I'll take a wait-and-see attitude at this point, but I'm going to work very hard to earn the endorsement.
David?
Get 30 seconds.
David, you have 30 seconds.
I'm absolutely honoring the endorsement. I'm
Okay.
sorry, were you talking to me?
Yep.
Yeah, okay. Absolutely.
Gene?
I would honor the endorsement because when you run against the endorsee, you're splitting the party, and that's not going to be good in November.
Jason?
Yeah, I live a whopping 2 miles outside the district. I, like Michelle Bachmann and Rod Grams before me, got drawn out. I'm the poster child for gerrymandering. My school district's in the district. My wife works at the swim shop in Apple Valley. I'm in the district every day, going to my doctor or going someplace else. So that's just a red herring. The fact is, I'm going to abide by the endorsement because my views best represent the district, and I don't know why anybody else wouldn't.
Pam?
Yes, I am abiding by the endorsement.
Darlene?
I'm actually going to reach out to everyone in the process, and I would love to have the endorsement, but I think I need to reach out to everyone in the 2nd District, from the activists to the grassroots to every person, and so I'm going to continue on to the primary.
Okay, next question. There are a lot of submissions on this. Do you support our Second Amendment rights? You have 30 seconds. We'll start with David.
Absolutely. In fact, I have a carry permit, and obviously I don't have my weapon here in the school, but I open carry everywhere to display our rights because it is so important that people understand that we have this right, and I will fight for our right to bear arms.
Gene?
The Second Amendment right is very important. The opposition to it is always blaming guns or knives or something when someone gets hurt or murdered, when actually it's behavior. It's the people. And so I fully support Second Amendment rights.
Jason?
Of course, I fought hard for those for 25 years on the radio, and I intend to do the same in Congress. My wife's a former police officer, so she can tell you all about why policemen and women carry weapons. You don't want to be defenseless. One of the keys for the next member of Congress is to work on concealed carry reciprocity across state lines, because since the Heller decision and the McDonald decision, you've got a number of courts. The Supreme Court said for the first time in Heller, the right to bear arms is a fundamental right, and yet you've got lower courts not abiding by that. So we need to move on some of those issues in Congress.
Pam?
Yes, Glenn. The people's right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed, and I take that literally.
Darlene?
I absolutely support the Second Amendment. I actually had a situation personally where a police officer, when I asked him what I should do, told me to go get a gun, learn how to use it, take the training, and get one. And I followed that direction. I would definitely support it in Congress.
John?
Well, here's what makes me different than the rest here. Back in 1985, I was a security supervisor at Sears. I was also a prison guard, and I had to sue the city of St. Cloud back in 1985 for the permit and the right to carry a concealed weapon. Now, everybody talks about it. I actually did something about it. Now, the other thing is I don't show off my handgun on the side. I wear that concealed. If I was wearing a handgun, you wouldn't know whether I was wearing one or not. It's not for political posturing. It's something to take serious. And you can see I did that over 30 years ago. I actually took action and didn't do it for political posturing.
Okay, next question. It's a combination question. Do you support term limits for Congress? If you do, how many terms for the House of Representatives and how many terms for the Senate? Okay? Again, 30 seconds, and we'll start with Gene.
Term limits is a good principle of not letting people stay in office forever, but I'm against it. I believe the American voters can make up their own mind, and I don't think we should second-guess the American voters. I believe there's two groups of people who are in office: those that trust the people and those that distrust the people. Tyranny comes from those that distrust the people.
Jason.
Yeah, I do believe in term limits. I would set it at 4 terms in the House and 2 terms in the Senate. Now, that's more than generous. It's 20 years. But if we had that in effect right now, half of Congress would have to go home. It works for the president. The founders called it rotation in office. Now, they didn't think anybody would want to serve that long, so they didn't put it into the Constitution. But they trusted people who were willing to give up power. Unfortunately, we have people in Washington today that won't go out until they're horizontal. We need to stop that.
Pam.
By the way, I received the A grade from the NRA, and so in my 4 years in the Minnesota House of Representatives, I supported our Second Amendment rights by voting for them. As far as term limits go, I do support a bill that would have term limits: 6 terms in the House, which is 12 years, and 2 terms in the Senate, which is 12 years as well.
Darlene.
I absolutely support term limits. And to be honest, I guess I've never been asked this before, but I would say it should be the same as what our president is. It should be 8 years. We should not have career politicians.
John.
Absolutely. I believe that we should have term limits. I don't think people should go to Congress and plan on retirement there. You know, I think either 3 terms in the House and 2 terms in the Senate, or some combination of it, no more than 10 to 12 years of service. You know, you should go there as public service, and I hope that's what people are looking at here. who wants a job or who's going to serve the public. And that's what you should really be looking at when you serve.
David.
I believe in term limits. I believe that people should go to Congress. It should not be a career. They should go there to serve. However, our founding fathers understood that the voting booth was the greatest way to term limit your representatives if they are not being held to their principles. And this community has a stay in ensuring that we followed what our founding fathers set in place.
Thank you. Next question. Again, 30 seconds. Do you support the passage of Kate's Law? Bill O'Reilly popularized this law. It has to do with illegal immigration and the commitment of, I think, felonies and a number of other things. If you need additional explanation about Kate's Law, Jeff will be glad to explain it to you. We'll start with Jason.
Well, it was a case in California where the poor woman was slain by an illegal immigrant, and we have seen an uptick in crime from illegal immigration. We also sadly see, whether it's legal or illegal immigration, they have more of a chance of being on public assistance. In fact, the Center for Immigration Studies says it costs us about $113 billion a year in just illegal immigration costs. Part of that, policing and corrections, $84 billion of which are borne by the states. So the big question here is, what are we going to do about it? And it's not just illegal immigration, I might add. We now have Syrian refugees the state of Minnesota wants to take in that will cost us billions. We need to tackle that too, which all revolves around this issue.
Pam.
Yes, I would support Kate's Law. And I think as far as the 11.5 million people that are here illegal, undocumented, we should be sending the violent ones home first. We should be deporting them first. Yes.
Darlene?
I do support Kate's Law. I don't believe we should have sanctuary cities. And as far as the 11.5 million people here, we need to make sure that we can protect our borders and that we vet the people coming in here. And we cannot just provide amnesty to these people. We need to make sure that they are Americans, want to be American values.
John?
We absolutely need to take action against people that are breaking our laws. And, you know, one of the things we talk about, sanctuary cities, if I'm elected to Congress, one of the first things I'll do is put forth a bill that says if you're a sanctuary city, you're not going to receive any federal funding. Because, you know, when somebody is addressing an issue or a crime, one of the things the police absolutely need to do is identify that person. And for our cities to instruct the police to completely disregard the laws of the United States is not correct.
David?
We should absolutely defund transportation to sanctuary cities, and we should send all illegal criminals back home, and they should be deported.
And Gene?
There is a huge problem, but I think we could prevent a lot of these problems if we simply try to allow the people into the United States that are going to be law-abiding citizens. I mean, Obama here wants 10,000 refugees to be allowed in here, but they're not screening them properly. And I believe a lot of our problems can be prevented by doing proper screening.
And Pam?
Yes.
Oh, I asked that already. All right. Next question. Here's the question. Do you believe that climate change is the result of human activity? Please elaborate in 30 seconds or less.
I do not believe that climate change is a result of human activity. A volcano happens and it changes our atmosphere. I believe there is changes that are happening in our climate. When I was in high school, we were worried about a new ice age, and there's now global warming, and we're talking about in the 2030s and the 2040s of more cold weather coming and not a new ice age.
Darlene?
Well, don't believe humans really make a difference in the climate change, but there is a lot of potential for innovation to develop different climate change ideas. I certainly support a lot of those, whether it's energy savings, but we have done a lot of that. We are number one in the nation for climate change progression already.
John?
Well, I think Mother Nature is the most powerful force when it comes to climate change, and if there's one significant volcanic eruption, this is going to do more to change the environment than anything mankind has done. Now, that doesn't mean that we shouldn't take reasonable measures. I don't think we need to hurt our business and economy, but certainly we need to take care of, I'm a conservationist, and I believe we need to do what we can to do the right thing.
David?
The real question is, what is the federal government going to do about it? And unfortunately, Obama's own data from his own studies for the policies that he is suggesting show that the impact from these programs will be insignificant, yet the impact on the economy will be great, and it will create significantly regressive taxes.
Gene?
Well, the Paris Accord, where they talked about the future of climate change and the big concern, it costs billions and billions of dollars per year. And in that accord, the developed nations are going to be paying and flipping most of the bill for the undeveloped nations. I am against that because I believe the Earth is changing in ways that science has stated our magnetic field is decreasing, and as it does, the Earth is heating up.
And Jason?
Yeah, they confuse causation with correlation. We thought we were going into a little ice age again after post-World War II, and the industrial greenhouse gases really started to multiply up until the 70s. Then it was global warming up until the late 1990s. And the government's very own models show the last 15 years it's flatlined, and they have no idea why. But they're basing policy on it. So what do you get from this policy? You get AWA Goodhue wind farms. You get people's lives destroyed. You get a climate power plan or a clean power plan by this president that's going to cost $500 billion to lower global temperatures by 0.02 degrees if China and India go along. Grab your wallets.
Okay, with that, we will have a question from the audience on energy. I believe Jeff?
Where's Christy at? Christy Rosenquist has a question on energy.
What would be your plan for dealing with, on the electrical side of energy, production tax credit, ITC, and regulations that are primarily designed to promote wind, solar, and other non-functional renewable energy?
And we'll start with Pam. You have 30 seconds.
I believe
1 minute. Okay, 1 minute on this question.
I believe that it's better when we have free markets, when the government does not have subsidies or subsidize different forms of energy, that the consumers are able to pick, that it makes financial common sense. I believe in reducing the regulations, and adding more regulations results in increasing in our premiums, our bills, which will result in greater hardship for those people who are on fixed incomes and lower incomes.
Darlene.
Well, I certainly don't support any additional taxes. And I do support any kind of solar or wind energy, but it depends on the area. Having government decide that one size fits all is not the answer. It depends on the community, it depends on the county, the state, and we are so over-regulated, and they're going to continue to over-regulate it. We need to get rid of all of that. We want to be safe, but we don't need to be paying through the nose for over-regulation. And the other part of it is it should be free enterprise. It shouldn't be the government dictating how this should be done. Free enterprise would do a lot better job at this.
John?
Well, we shouldn't build subsidies into the business model. That just doesn't work. And Christy, thanks for your question. You know, I worked very hard on trying to defeat the big wind towers, and I think you know, they just simply do not work, and it's not a good use of taxpayer money, and that's what these designs are. The problem, though, is we subsidize just about every form of energy, and one of the, you know, not to say that we shouldn't have smart energy. You know, certainly wind and solar should be part of the mix, but we subsidize everything. Having a strong energy and getting ourselves energy independent is part of a good national security plan. So we should have a mix of it. We should be working towards getting energy independent. And I applaud people that take measures on their own behalf to move towards energy independence, because we should look at that.
David?
We need to remove all government interference with all forms of energy, all regulations, all subsidies, and allow them to compete in the open market on their own.
Gene?
We need to allow the breeder reactors to be built. What they do is they will consume the waste of nuclear reactors. Here we're wondering what to do with the waste of nuclear reactors. Build breeder reactors. Breeder reactors put out hardly no waste, and the waste it does put out is not that radioactive. It doesn't have a great lifespan. And so I believe the future is breeder reactors. You probably say, hey, can you protect them? And I believe yes. Our country is the greatest country in the world, and I believe we can build breeder reactors and, under a quality security measure, and I believe we need to go ahead with that and run our cars as much as possible on electricity. To answer your question, wind, no; solar, yes.
Jason?
I believe Christy's question was, how do you feel about the wind production tax credit? And the answer is it was snuck back in. It was set to expire until the budget deal last December, a couple of months ago, and they snuck it back in as another tax extender. I am vehemently opposed to that. We need a level playing field for energy across the board. And as I said earlier, this is why we get the wind farms. T. Boone Pickens wouldn't have targeted AWA Goodhue without the wind production tax credit. The same with solar. The reason our utility bills went up last year in Minnesota by 10% is because we have a renewable portfolio standard requiring that XL gets 30% of its power by 2030 from renewable power. Look, all of these ideas were put about when we were running out of coal, we were running out of oil, we were running out of the cheapest energy. That's not happening anymore, as we all can attest. So I would undo all of those, and that's why our tax code is full of holes that looks like Swiss cheese, because some lobbyist, some interest group wants to get a credit in there, and after a while, you and I have to pick up the burden because they're not paying taxes for it.
Okay, at this point, we'll have an award for a free speech contest by Ernie and the student grant Schlichting. I hope I pronounced that correctly.
Schlichting.
Schlichting, okay. We'll also have a question for the candidates. Keep your response to 1 minute.
Grant, where are you? Come on up. Every year, the Hiawatha Valley Toastmasters has an annual contest for what it means to be an American. And Grant took third place with an outstanding presentation on what it means to be in America. I want to give you this award. You deserve it. Thank you very much. And I'd be interested to hear, what question would you have for our candidates tonight?
All right. So the question I have is, I know I'm in debate and speech, and so for me it's a lot about getting my voice heard and being able to present myself. So my question is, how are you going to present yourself in Congress that's going to make people listen to you, and how you are going to be able to push forward your policies for not only Minnesota but for America?
We'll start with Darlene. 1 minute, please.
Well, I am not a politician. I'm a business leader, I'm a business owner, and I'm really not about talk. I'm about solutions. So when I get to Washington, D.C., I intend to use some of my business traits to implement and to listen and to balance a budget. So that's how I feel I will manage in Washington, D.C. and get my word across.
John?
Well, Grant, that's a great question, and I'll tell you, that's where having a little experience in the legislative body means a lot, because you need to push as hard as you can. Now, you've got some members up here that said they're going to go join the Freedom Club. You know, there's a time and a place where you hold leadership accountable. When they promise you something, they're not doing it, or they're not doing the right thing. But I tell you what, if you're just going to go up to Washington, D.C., and thumb your nose at everybody and not get anything done, all you're going to do is minimize your constituents. You know, you need to move the ball forward. So you need to push as hard as you can without alienating people. Because in the end, we need to make America work. We need to get the economy going. We have serious national security issues. So we need to work together. And it isn't just about, it isn't just about you as the person and making a name for yourself. It's about getting the hard work done. And sometimes you can do a lot of that behind the scenes and working very hard. I was very successful in getting legislation passed in the State House, and it was about doing common sense things, like the yellow flashing arrow. When you come to a stoplight and you want to take a left-hand turn, if no one's coming the other way, you can take a left-hand turn because of my legislation. So again, it's common sense, and you have to push as hard as you can.
David?
Well, I think I've been setting an example. I've been having town hall meetings, dozens of them, across this congressional district and getting out and talking to the people. And that's the job of a representative. You also need to use your voice and get on the media and reframe the debate from the liberal media and our failed leadership. And I set a great example on Up and Adam. I explained how we can advance our true conservative principles, how we should have defunded Planned Parenthood and forced Obama to justify shutting down the government to fund a private organization which was illegally and immorally harvesting baby parts.
Gene?
I believe we need to fix the trouble in the Republican Party. I believe the Republican Party is the problem of America, not so much the Democrats. The Republican Party, the establishment, uses a majority vote system, and it weeds out the grassroots. So all of a sudden, the grassroots Republicans wonder, why should I go to the polls and vote for a candidate that I don't believe in? Well, the problem is because the establishment does the endorsing, not the grassroots Republicans. This country would be totally different today if the grassroots were being represented the last 30 years. We would have had different presidents, we would have a strong Congress, but that's not happening. So what do we need in Congress? We need to lead with conviction. And Congress needs to decide when life begins, because the courts can't figure out when life begins. When does life begin? Does it begin at birth or does it begin at conception?
Jason?
Well, the answer is fairly straightforward. You've got to put principle above party. For years and years in this country, we've had this red versus blue tribalism where the tribes and the parties get together and they do what's best for them instead of doing what's best for the nation. There's a lot of talk about getting things done. Well, they got something done in December. They undid the only spending cuts that were actually working, the budget sequestration, and they replaced it with increasing the deficit $680 billion. They got together and they got something done. Well, it depends on what you're getting done, whether it's worth it. I'm willing to work with anybody in Congress as long as they agree with the principles I'm going to espouse. I don't care what party they're from. And I'm not going to be just a big government Republican who says, let's cut the Democrat programs, but let's keep ours. That's how we got in this mess. Big government Democrats and big government Republicans. Let's be honest. The debt has skyrocketed under Obama, but it's tripled since 2001. The budget has doubled since 2001. So let's disabuse ourselves of placing party above principle and get back to governing the nation.
Pam?
I will represent myself in the same way that I represented myself in the House of Representatives, as your voice. That's why I'm abiding by the endorsement. That's why I'm making hundreds and hundreds of phone calls. It's because I want to represent you. I'm a certified public accountant, which is a skill set that is really valuable when you think about the financial difficulties our country is in. I'm also an experienced legislator and had 4 bills that were unanimously passed in the House and signed into law by the governor. And so I will be listening to you first of all, and listening to my colleagues and working together to make government work for us.
Okay, now we will have questions that will allow one candidate to answer for 1 minute. Other candidates, if they wish to speak to the question, need to put up their rebut card. Okay, is that clear? Mm-hmm. So 1 minute, one question. Please let me ask the question before we. But so 1 minute to the first candidate, and then the rest of the candidates have 30 seconds if they want to respond to the same question. And you put up your rebut card, and I will call on you, depending how quickly you put the rebut card up. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, first question goes to John. How do you not become a part of the Washington problem? Second part of the question, what gives you your strength to go against the establishment? There were multiple submissions on this question.
Well, thank you for the question. I think I've got a record of standing up and being independent. I mean, how many people in here, I guess, in the Senate district got phone calls when I didn't when I challenged the leadership? I mean, the actual Republican machine made phone calls against me in my own Senate district, because one of the things I proposed when I was a senator is I wanted to reduce our overall tax from 6.875 down to 4.9. Actually, when you figure in local option sales tax, it's like 7.22, but lower that to 4.9 and eliminate the personal income tax. Well, Governor Dayton didn't like it because it didn't provide new revenue for him, but the Republican Party didn't like it because they had a mantra of no new taxes, and then obviously it was expanding the sales tax and lowering the base. So I not only have a record of that, and I've got more instances I don't have time to share them here, but I actually am a very independent voice. I'm a very conservative voice, and I can tell you, serving in the Senate, you know the people that you work with, not all of them are true conservatives.
Any rebuts? Seeing none, we'll move to the next question. Again, 1 minute. And this is for David. What makes you the most qualified to serve in Congress?
What makes me qualified is that people know where I stand on the issues. They know that I will uphold my principles. People know me. They have seen me for 3 years. I have developed the relationships down here. I have met with people at dozens of town hall meetings. I am going to follow the Constitution. They have seen me stand up for what I believe in, no matter the cost.
John, for a rebut, 30 seconds.
Yeah, I think that, again, we're all going to say about the same thing here, but you have people that just talk, and talk is real cheap. Now, you've got a couple of people on the stage here that actually have had to legislate, and we have to answer for our votes. Now, people are going to try and misconstrue those or whatever, but you call and you talk to us about our votes and hold us accountable, and let's have that discussion.
Okay.
Let's have that discussion.
Darlene, go ahead.
Go ahead, Darlene.
You know, I think it makes a difference that I have the real life experiences. I haven't been in politics before, but I've definitely been in business, and working in Congress is like running a business. And you have to bring those same values there. You have to listen, and you have to work across, and you have to implement. All those things are absolutely critical. And I really feel that my business background, my hard work background, growing up on a farm, will make a difference when I get to Congress.
Jason?
Well, you have to be willing to stand by your principles. I mean, I've had my 15 minutes, and everybody knows where I stand. I've said it time and time again. I haven't changed my positions, and I'm willing to take that to Washington because this country's at an inflection point. But, John, if you want to play the experience card all the time, you might want to tell the folks why you voted for a Mark Dayton bonding bill in 2012 that Representative Draskowski, who's endorsed my campaign, called a blank check for Mark Dayton and created the Deed Corporate Slush Fund.
Gene?
Well, we've heard of microeconomics, we've heard of macroeconomics, but we need to hear something about universal economics, the universe, what's holding this all together in that. And I would believe 2 Corinthians 3:17 really sums it up. Now the Lord is a spirit, and where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is a liberty. 2 Corinthians 3:17.
Pam?
Thank
30
you.
seconds.
The reason why I believe I'm the most qualified is I have the experience having served in the legislature for 4 years. People can see how I voted. I have stayed with the course. I have been a conservative and done those particular values that we have. And also, I'm a certified public accountant. And again, those are a lot of the big issues that we're facing in our nation.
John, under the rules that were given to me, if one candidate mentions something negative to another, you can respond to that in the next question using your 30 seconds, rather than a back and forth on the same question in order to move this forward. The next question will come from, I believe, a student in the audience. You will have 1 minute. Who's the candidate? Gene will have 1 minute to answer, and 30-second rebuts are appropriate. I believe Jeff has the...
Yep, I got it right here. This is Matt Brewer. He's from Ms. Luschke's AP government class here in Cannon Falls, and it's a two-part question.
Hi. What are your priorities on policies if you were to be elected? What do you believe is the largest issue that needs to be addressed in the nation?
Gene, you'll have 1 minute to respond to the question. And again, any rebuts would have 30 seconds. Gene?
The priorities would be security. Number one, I believe we need to be strong. Peace through strength, as Ronald Reagan did. I believe as far as our economy, a 12% flat tax with a $12,000 deduction on the, and then also a fair tax system. Right now it's House File 25, the fair tax system, and it basically has the states implement the sales tax. That would encourage savings, and also a gold standard should be considered, because we have runaway inflation that's low right now, I know, but there's huge deficits that are going on.
Darlene, 30 seconds.
Well, I think the three top issues that I'm hearing about from the people in the 2nd District is, number one is jobs and the economy. People have a real fear of losing their job, not having a job, being underemployed, and so that's critical. And then along with that fear, I'm also hearing fear of ISIS. It's a real fear, and they're concerned our government's not protecting us. And the third thing for me is mental health. I really feel we need to address that problem that is happening out there today.
Jason, 30 seconds.
Yeah, you've got to restore the economy and get some sort of semblance of economic growth. During 1 quarter of the Reagan years, we were growing at 8.3%. GDP in the 4th quarter, we just found out, was 0.7%. Median wages are down 4,000 from at the end of the beginning of the recession, and now at the beginning of the recovery, they're still down 4,000. We've got to reform the tax code, get rid of the carve-outs for GE and the corporate welfare, quit substituting bailouts for bankruptcy, and have a flatter, fairer tax. Reform health care, audit the Fed. This monetary policy is giving us these credit booms and busts, and now we're getting a bust. And of course, we've got to secure the homeland.
Pam, 30 seconds.
I believe that we need to have responsible spending, and we need to reduce the interference of government in our lives, particularly in the area of businesses, because that will give us the opportunity to have more job creation. And we need to secure our borders and protect our country.
And John, 30 seconds, and you can rebut previous comments.
Well, first off, our national debt is our number one issue. It affects everything we do. It affects our national security. It affects our trade deficit with China. You know, we owe China almost $2 trillion now. We need them to buy our U.S. debt. But when it comes to bonding, Jason, you're just showing your naivety there with not understanding how roads and bridges get built. You know, the reason you bond for projects like that is because you don't have one group of people paying for a benefit that the next 20 or 30 years someone is going to use. So you spread that out so everybody that enjoys that improvement gets to pay for that improvement.
Okay, next question. Under the same rules. Do you support the repeal of the Affordable Health Care Act, Obamacare? If you do, what new ideas would you propose to fill the health care void left by the repeal of Obamacare? Since I wrote a small book on Obamacare and why it won't work, I will answer the question, and if you agree, just say dittos. No, just kidding. No, 1 minute, and this question goes to Jason.
Well, of course, you've got to repeal Obamacare, but it's a great question because just saying repeal is not enough. We've got to go back to when this problem started, all the way back in World War II with wage and price controls, when businesses could not give employees a raise, so they started granting them health care at work. Then we changed the tax code in the 1950s so that now the only place you got health care was at work. Well, guess what? Somebody turns 50, 60, and they have diabetes and they lose their job. All of a sudden, they're thrown in the individual market for the first time trying to buy health care, and they've got a pre-existing condition. We need to change the tax code. We need to buy health care across state lines, but most importantly, you need to undo the mandates, the ridiculous essential wellness benefits that pay for all sorts of gambling addiction counseling, keeping baby Huey on your family plan until he's 26. This has driven up the cost of health care, combined with community rating, and we've seen young people getting priced out of the health care market. So let's treat it like any other form of insurance where you can take it with you. Let's get the costs down. You can buy a real catastrophic policy, not the kind President Obama thinks you need, and all of a sudden you solve a big chunk of this problem.
Darlene, 30 seconds.
We need to repeal Obamacare. It has failed us in all directions. The cost, it's costing all of us more, every one of us, plus any of us who supply it to our businesses, to our people. You no longer can keep your doctor like we were promised we could, and I would not say we're getting better care. Some of the things we could do is have insurance across state lines. We could do small groups, put them together. There's a lot of innovative ideas we can come up with to reduce the cost instead of paying the absolutely ridiculous cost we're paying today.
Pam?
Yes, it should be repealed in its entirety and replaced. We need to have health insurance similar to car insurance, where we keep it even though we might lose our job. It's portable. And that it does go across state lines. That as an individual, we can pick what we want, what we need, and what we choose. Just like we do when we get a car insurance policy. We pick the particular policy we want.
Seeing no other rebuts,
there we go.
John?
Certainly, the ACA is not working. If you look in in Goodhue County, we have one option. We have the highest increase in premiums. You know, when the president said, if you like your program, you get to keep it. If you like your doctor, you get to keep it. Well, guess what? I didn't get to keep my insurance policy. I didn't get to keep my doctor. Everything changed. And so competition is the answer. Government is not the answer. And certainly buying insurance across state lines, that was one of the problems we had when I was running the Sears stores. So we need to definitely work on that issue. But we need to have free market. A one-size-fits-all is not the answer.
Okay, Gene. 30 seconds.
I just want to add that basically Obamacare, the requirement that you have to carry it harms the poor people, and it takes away their freedom. They have to pay $675 approximately as a penalty, and also or 2.5% of their income if they do not take it. So it definitely must be repealed.
Okay, seeing no other rebut cards, we will go to the next question. Pam, this is for you, 1 minute. Islamic terrorism is the #1 concern of Americans today. What steps would you take to destroy Islamic terrorism in America?
As I've been calling the people across the 2nd Congressional District, this has been one of the very top priorities that they have named, is their fear of Islamic terrorism and security. They worry about their safety, even going to the Mall of America or the Burnsville Center. First of all, what we need to do is we need to secure our borders. We've heard of people coming in. We need to secure our borders. Then we need to have a plan, an effective plan and resolution with great resolve to go forward and destroy the enemy.
Gene, 30 seconds.
You have seen my posters out front, and I believe we need to attack Islamic terrorism as it is. It is terrorism, and the best way of doing that is let Israel police the Middle East. I believe that's what we need to get back to, as in 1967. People felt the most secure, and 60% of the people back then believed the government did the right thing most of the time. Right now, only 19% of the people believe that government is doing the right thing.
John?
ISIS absolutely must be defeated. But, you know, we need to have the people defend, the people of, especially the men of fighting age, defend their own country first. We need to require that, and they have to demonstrate that. You know, America cannot be the world's police officer. We have to have countries that are going to stand up and fight, but we can also build coalitions, but we must defeat ISIS. There is no other option.
Jason?
We need to put pressure on our so-called Sunni allies. Sunnis outnumber the Shia in the Middle East 9-1. We're allied with Saudi Arabia, Qatar, UAE, but when we need them in Syria, for instance, Saudi Arabia goes to Yemen. They look the other way as the Wahhabist school teach this radical version that it becomes Al-Qaeda in Iraq or ISIS in Syria. So we need to put pressure on them and tell them to step up to the plate. General Petraeus said just a few weeks ago that he wouldn't put troops in Syria because they would support the Sunni rebels there that he doesn't trust. So if we don't get that handled real soon, we're going to have a big problem.
Darlene?
You're right. I'm hearing this as a #1 issue also. And I would encourage us to agree with the SAFE Act, protect our borders. We all know that we cannot vet these people properly now, and the SAFE Act says it has to be done through all 3 agencies. We need to make sure that we know the people who are coming into this country are not ISIS people and are not going to harm us.
David, 30 seconds.
We need to secure our southern border. We need to end the visa waiver program. We need to ensure that refugees do not come in from countries where we cannot properly vet them. We need to have the best intelligence in the world by working with our allies, and we need to cut off the head of the snake. Anytime we know of any kind of threat to us anywhere in the world, we need to take out the leaders, we need to take out the training cells, and ensure that #1 job of the federal government is actually done, and that is to provide our national security.
The next question will come from Jeff. It was submitted by a veteran who's not here, and the same rules apply as far as responding. And Darlene, you'll have 1 minute. Jeff, do you want to ask the question?
Yeah. This question was submitted through our website, and it comes from Bruce Jernberg from Red Wing. Hopefully I didn't butcher that too bad. Here's what he wrote. I'm a Vietnam veteran. I serve my country with honor. The VA medical centers in Minnesota have properly and respectfully given me excellent care for years. I'm probably still living because of the care I received. His question is, many of the Republican candidates for president have favored abolishing the VA health system by turning it over to what he calls private, for-profit, greedy healthcare sector. Do any of the GOP CD2 candidates favor abolishing and privatizing the VA healthcare system?
Darlene, 1 minute.
Well, I certainly appreciate your service, Bruce, #1. And it's good to hear that we have good health care here. My brothers were also part of, or are veterans, and one of them got his health care in St. Paul, and it was good too. But we hear about a lot of areas where it isn't good, or where there isn't available health care through the vets. And I think we have to do a combination. We have to make sure that if it's not available, they can go to private health care, or if they're not being seen like they're supposed to be, they have alternatives. And that's, I think, what we're hearing from many areas, where these people are standing in line forever, or they're not getting in to get their prescriptions filled, or whatever is needed. So in that case, I'd favor them being allowed to go to public health care.
Jason, 30 seconds.
Yeah, I mean, pursuant to the question, and thanks for your service, I had two brothers in Vietnam, one of whom is now getting his health care in a serious way from the VA, and he gets good health care, but not everybody does. And part of the problem with the VA is it's almost a precursor in some ways to what the president is trying to do. Their idea of giving free health care to everyone, in this case servicemen who certainly deserve it, is to penalize the providers and tell them to work for free, or keep cutting provider payments like they are in Medicare. And what you get then is rationing. You get less care for a growing number of people. So I would be in favor of allowing some form of a premium, health insurance premium, so folks that couldn't get their health care at the VA could go to the private sector, absolutely.
John?
Well, Glenn, you've served with my brother Jeff, Lieutenant Colonel Jeff Howe, and certainly I think we do need to take care of our veterans. I would not be in favor of dismantling the Veterans Administration hospitals. I think the option, and like you've heard here before, is to give options, additional options to veterans. If the travel is too far, or if the care is not being what it wants or what's needed, it gives them an option, and it provides some form of relief to someone who doesn't feel they're getting properly taken care of, because we should take care of all of our service veterans. And Bruce, I appreciate your service.
Seeing no other rebut cards, we will go on to the next question. This goes to John. Same rules apply. Since this is a critical issue in the district here, I'll read the full question. Governor Dayton and Olmsted County favor a high-speed zip rail passenger train between the Twin Cities and Rochester. This train could, if it is at grade level, cut CD2 into and cause horrendous hardship to the residents in its path. And if it is an elevated bed, the cost will more than double, even triple. According to proponents, this project is to be funded by private investors. Would you believe Communist China? That's part of the question. And no state or local public funds are to be used. However, the FRA will be involved, and if any federal funds are in play, the horrors of eminent domain may apply. Will you oppose this project, and what can you do to keep the federal funds out of this project? John, 1 minute.
Certainly I would not support the project, and I'll do everything in my power to make sure that federal funds aren't available for that project. You know, one of the things that you hear from people that like government solutions to, problems is that we're going to get federal dollars for that. Well, you may get federal dollars for the creation, but not for the operation or the continued operation. And, I may just say this off the top here, but, if you look at the land acquisition or what it would take to build a zip rail or high-speed rail, you could probably provide bus service for a few hundred years just in what the acquisition cost is going to be. So I don't think there's a demonstrated need here. Again, it's a solution in search of a problem, and I would not support it.
Jason?
I fought really hard against the AWA Goodhue wind power farm with my column in the Star Tribune on my radio program, and thanks to the people down here who actually did the hard work, you stopped that for now. The same is true here. I mean, what's $4.2 billion among friends, right? That's supposedly the cost, not to mention the E-5 visas, where we hand out green cards like candy to anybody that throws in some money, and there's been a number of scandals there. Part of the problem is, when it comes to transportation at the federal level, is we've adopted this mass transit account in the Highway Trust Fund. And that's where your federal gas tax dollars are going, being siphoned off for these rail projects. And that's why they keep saying we got to raise taxes, but we don't build roads.
Darlene? I would definitely oppose this zip line. Again, it's a government oversight, a government deciding what we should do in this community rather than letting the people of the state or the county or the communities decide what's best for them. Instead of putting that money into a zip rail, what about our bridges and our roads and our other infrastructure that needs to be improved? We need to get government to stop deciding in D.C. what needs to happen here.
Gene, 30 seconds.
We need to go ahead with a superhighway system, not a zip rail. We need to double the lanes on 494, 694. We need to have a super highway system going from major city to major city across this country. And we better do it quick because time is money. And the people's money is going basically nowhere and going in the negative when you have to sit and sit in freeways that aren't even moving.
David?
Transportation is inherently local, and we need to get the federal government out of transportation. And there's a conservative bill out there that does just that. It's called the Transportation Empowerment Act. What it does is it lowers gasoline taxes from 19.3 cents to 2.9 cents over time and transfers responsibility back to the states where it belongs. We need to get behind these true conservative solutions and move back to local control and ensure that we follow the 10th Amendment.
Pam, 30 seconds.
Thank you. Gas taxes are collected on people who drive cars and trucks. And those taxes, those revenues should be used to build roads and bridges, not transit.
The next question will go to David, 1 minute, and it has to do with agriculture policy. How would you change our current farm/agricultural policy? David, 1 minute.
Well, there's one key to that before you can do anything, and that is to get food stamps out of the Farm Bill. Until you do that, you cannot have a discussion about true reform or any kind of discussion about how to make any kind of reforms to farm policy. So the first thing is we have to eliminate that from the discussion. It needs to be talked about on its own. And when I go around to our district and talk about our farmers, they are overwhelmed by the federal involvement in their farms. And we need to talk about how we're going to get the federal government out of every aspect of farming.
Darlene, 30 seconds.
Well, I agree. The Farm Act was just implemented again in 2014, but when 80% of it does not involve farmers, there's a problem. We need to make the Farm Act, not, like you said, part of the SNAP Act or the Food Stamp Act.
Gene, 30 seconds.
Well, one thing about that is the shipping. I believe the exports going out of this country, I believe the unions and the union shipping has to be, I think 50% of it, I'm not positive on this, has to be our own ships at union prices. And if another country wants to use their own ships, they can't do that. So the farmer is in a catch-22 between shipping and selling their product to other countries as exports. Another thing is a strong dollar.
Jason?
Yeah, the 2014 Farm Bill was about $956 billion, made up of crop insurance, commodity price supports, and primarily food stamps, over $730 billion. We just need to reduce food stamps. We've got 600,000 Minnesotans on food stamps, 50 million Americans. It has been skyrocketing under this president. That's what we need to do to help reduce the overall cost. And I would add one more thing. Someone who's wealthy, well-off, doesn't need a farm subsidy, someone who doesn't farm full-time, for instance, they ought not get a commodity support or a farm subsidy either.
John?
Well, certainly I don't think our government should be in the process of picking winners and losers. I'm a person that actually grew up on a farm and know what it's like to combine a field and haul corn to the elevator. So farmers feed America. I don't think the farmers get certainly the respect that they deserve, and I think we need to have a market-based. I think that we need to shift from that, and food stamps certainly are an area that we need to look at.
Okay, we're going to go on to the next question. David, you had your rebut card up?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yep. Okay, the next question will come from the student again, Matt, and Jeff will introduce the question. The same rules apply, and the question will go to Gene for 1 minute.
Yeah, Matt's a rock star apparently in Ms. Luschke's class, right? So he has a question about college tuition costs.
What are your plans with rising college tuition costs? How can they be made more affordable?
Well, first of all, we have to look at the tuitions in light of paying off the loans, the student loans that students take on, and it's getting, I believe, a bad rap. The student loans is because there are students that aren't doing too good in college or don't take college seriously, and so what happens is they don't pay off their student loans. They, I heard of one case where, you know, a student dies, and obviously they can't pay it off because of suicide and stress and so on. So it's a very complicated thing that the student loans need to be fair, and I believe they need to be used wisely.
Okay. Jason, 30 seconds.
You know, you look at the Democratic response to this, and it's almost classic. College tuition has gone up faster than fuel, than gasoline, than groceries, than even health care in the last 30 years. It's the single fastest growing cost to middle-income families and even higher-income families. So naturally, what do our Democratic friends propose? Well, let's subsidize it. Let's take the student debt bubble of $1 trillion and have the government pay it down. Now, we've gone down this road where we've had these $1 trillion bubbles before, and Wall Street slices and dices them, we subsidize it, and then they go bust. We are doing a massive disservice to young people by telling them they absolutely have to go to a 4-year liberal arts school that costs $25,000 a year to get a degree in sociology and then come out with a debt of $200,000 that they can't service. We need to focus on trade schools and some other VOTEC schools and have people do some real jobs sometimes as well.
That went a little over, but okay. Pam, 30 seconds.
Thank you. The best thing we can do about college tuition is have really great jobs for students once they graduate. More government involvement in colleges is what has caused all these tuitions to go up so high. But to have a job once you get out and to be able to put your college education to use rather than work at a pizza shop or at a Starbucks, but to be able to actually get a great job. And how can we do that? By government getting out of the way and reducing all the regulation that we have on our businesses, so encourage the creation of new jobs.
Darlene, 30 seconds.
I think we need to make our schools accountable for what they teach to make sure there's real jobs available for when they get out of school. And again, this becomes a state, a local issue, not a federal government issue. I worked with Dunwoody College of Technology and another school to create a program called Right Skills Now. And those people are employed in manufacturing and high-paying manufacturing jobs. Again, it's business working locally with the schools.
John.
Well, you know, one thing that's in our mandate to do is to fund the University of Minnesota. That is a land-grant university. One of the things the legislative body tries to do when we fund higher education is we put limiters in there. And we always get accused of, you know, not fully funding higher ed or what have you, but you put limits to how much they can increase tuition when you're doing these funding formulas. And it is a difficult equation. You know, when I went to college, you know, it was less expensive, but, you know, I had to work 3 jobs to pay it off. And I'm very proud that one of the first things I did when I started working full-time was to pay off my student loan.
And David.
You know, education used to be sacred here in America, and now, unfortunately, there are many cartels that are involved. And one thing that would directly lower the cost of higher education is to break up the accreditation cartels.
Okay. Seeing no other rebut cards that haven't already spoken, we'll go on to our last question. before your final comments, and it has to do with Planned Parenthood and abortion. Abortions make up only 3% of the services performed by Planned Parenthood. The agency's main services include providing contraceptives, pap tests, breast exams, test and treatment for STDs, and sexual education for men, women, and teens. Will you move to defund Planned Parenthood solely based on the abortion aspect of their services? This question goes to Pam. 1 minute.
I am pro-life, and I respect life from conception to natural death. And I have been appalled, as many of the people in the 2nd Congressional District, by the revelations that happened last fall. And yes, I would move to defund this private organization, Planned Parenthood.
David, 30 seconds.
Planned Parenthood illegally and immorally harvested baby parts. There is no way that I would allow taxpayer funds to go to this private organization.
Jason, 30 seconds.
Yeah, Planned Parenthood says, well, we don't take government money to fund abortions. But of course, money is fungible. They take the government money to fund all these other things you mentioned so they can perform more abortions. Of course, we defund Planned Parenthood. It's $500 million that can go to another women's health group, if need be, who can provide services without those horrific harvesting of body parts.
Darlene, 30 seconds.
I'm definitely pro-life and would defund Planned Parenthood and agree those funds need to be there for women, but not in conjunction with abortions.
Gene, 30 seconds.
I believe we need to go on the offense here and define. I think Congress should finally take it upon themselves, because the federal courts can't seem to know how to do it or when to do it, is when does life begin? And I believe Congress needs to decide when life begins.
John, 30 seconds.
I've been on record. I am pro-life, and I hope that people do check out people's records, because, you know, Jason Lewis is now running in Minnesota CD2, and he wants to say that he's considered pro-life. Well, he ran before in CD2 in Colorado, and he suggested that most people would consider him pro-choice. And so, you know, I think you need to find out where people's records really are.
Okay, I've just been informed that we do have time for one more question. So the last comment, that it was the last question, was just a tease, okay? And this question will go to Darlene Miller. You'll have 1 minute. And the question is, how would you deal with the over 11 million illegal immigrants presently in the U.S.? What steps would you support to deal with the illegal alien immigration problem in America going forward from this point?
Well, first of all, we have to get our system in place for the legal immigrants that are here so that we can get a better process and a faster process. But as far as the 11 million legal people that are here, we need to put them in the back of the line. They need to pay a fine. They may need to pay back taxes. And then we need to vet them properly before we'd ever consider even starting to work with them to stay here.
Seeing no other Pam, 30 seconds.
You're so quick, I'm sorry. The first thing that we need to do is we need to secure our borders and stop the inflow of illegal immigrants. And we also, we need to revise our visa system. And there are about 40% of the people here illegally are actually, they came here legally in the first place. And so we need to revise our system. And we also, of the 11 million, which Darlene didn't say, is we need to deport those who are right away, the priority of those that are violent, and deport them right away.
John, 30 seconds.
You can't reward people for breaking the law, and certainly they need to go to the back of the line, and we need to make sure that they are follow the rules, and if people are breaking our laws, they need to be deported.
Seeing no other rebut cards, we will move to closing statements. You will have 3 minutes for your closing statement, and we'll go in the order that was drawn randomly. First would be John with 3 minutes for your...
No, actually, I open, so I get to close last.
Reverse order.
It's a reverse order.
Oh,
So,
okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Then we'll start with Darlene. 3 minutes.
Well, again, thank you for having me here today. I appreciate all the questions. I wish we had more time to go through all the issues. You know, policy really, really does matter. And right now, here, we are at the lowest rate of new startup businesses ever. And this is due to government overregulation. You know, we need to encourage anyone who has a dream to start a new business, even if it's in their garage, to help them. And then when they grow up, make sure they stay here in America. Do everything we can. This problem is going to hurt us for decades and decades to go on. I am a true second district person, have lived here forever, and truly believe I know the people in the second district. My family lives here, my business is here, and I've listened to a lot of the people, and I know their hopes and fears and their dreams. As I said, the economic fear, the fear of ISIS, all of that is real, and we need to go to Congress and make a difference. Stop government overregulation, stop the talk, and do meaningful policy. It's not about just being there without creating a solution. And I truly believe that when I win in November, I can go there and make a difference with my business experience. I know how to listen, I know how to implement, and I know how to balance a budget. I've done it for 20 plus years and in my business, and it's the same in DC. We need people who are willing to step up and act and really be a part of every person's here life. It really takes someone who is just like every one of you to make a difference in Washington, D.C., and I can be that person. Thank you.
Pam, 3 minutes, closing statement.
Again, thank you so much for having us here tonight. It's been wonderful. I have been calling hundreds of people, and I think as I've gone through the room, I've talked to many of you, and one of the things that people have said is, I just don't trust politicians or candidates. It's just a lot of talk. They never do what they say. But I've also been honored, blessed, and privileged to hear so many of you say, I trust you, Pam, because you do what you say. You are trustworthy. They know my background. They know my experience. I'm a certified public accountant. I worked for many years at KPMG, an international public accounting firm. I'm a former 2-term state representative with a strong conservative and pro-life voting record. I have scorecard ratings from 100% from the Taxpayers League, Minnesota Chamber of Commerce, the Minnesota Citizens Concerned for Life, an A rating from the NRA, and the Elected Woman of Excellence Award from the National Foundation for Women Legislators. As I served in the legislature, I had 4 bills that were unanimously passed. I know how to make government work for us, to get the job done. In my first election, I ran against a strong Democrat incumbent who had won with 56% of the vote in the previous election. It was a 3-person race, and I defeated both of those gentlemen with over 50% of the vote. In my re-election, it was a really bad year for Republicans, and many lost their seats, but I won with a strong margin. I've been proven to be electable. I am trusted, experienced, and proven to be electable. I'm not going to sugarcoat this. As conservatives, we must hang on to the seat in Republican hands. And we can't talk our way to victory. We can't buy our way to victory. We need a person who is trusted, experienced, and provenly electable. And I'm that person. Thank you.
Jason, 3 minutes.
You know, for over 20 years, I've been with you fighting the good fight. Back in 1998, when there was $1 billion bonding bill, and size does matter, we went to the Capitol and started our tax rallies, our against bonding bill rallies, because it was bankrupting the state. I've been out there every step of the way. When I was working to help Michelle Bachmann get elected, when I was doing all of the things on the radio that you've known, that you now know. I was there. I was the conservative, consistent conservative who was there. That's what you want in somebody in Congress, somebody that you can count on. And that's why we've got more legislative endorsements than anybody else. That's why Michelle Bachmann asked me to introduce her when she announced for president in 2011. That's why Steve Draskowski's endorsed this campaign, Dan Hall, Dave Thompson. That's why we've got over 750 donors in this district, 90% of whom, I should say, are from the 2nd District, 750 donors, more than anyone. So I'm glad to come here to represent the 2nd District for you and do what needs to be done in Washington. There's a lot of talk about grassroots. We are the grassroots, you and me. We are the fight against the establishment. So I want you to join me in the endorsement effort and help get things done. You know, John mentions the life question. 26 years ago, I told somebody I believe life begins when the heartbeat begins. And somebody said, oh, you must be pro-choice. That must be it. And he's running off with that. You know, when I met my wife, Lee, she was making calls for birthright. When I wrote my book, I argued why Roe v. Wade was horrible, unconscionable constitutional law. I have done more radio shows on the life issue than anybody could possibly imagine with MCCL and others. So please, let's get back to the real issues at hand on what we disagree with, like stadium subsidies, big bonding bills, Common Core, and taking pay as a government employee when the government shuts down while state people are going without theirs. I'd like to see somebody on this panel address those issues. But look, the bottom line is this. I'm not going to promise you anything but two things. One, I will not be a congressman who brings home the pork. I'm going to fight it. And two, I am going to take the fight to the opponent in the fall because we need a conservative in the 2nd District who can win, and I'm going to be the one. Thank you very much.
Gene, 3 minutes, closing comments.
Well, I believe health is very important. I think GMO is out of control. That is generic modification of genes. One example is the Zika virus down in Brazil. And, you know, what the people aren't being told about the Zika virus is that this mosquito didn't just happen on its own. It is a generic modified mosquito that they thought would be good to create a male mosquito that would breed with the female mosquitoes, and then the mosquitoes are supposed to die. But that didn't happen. There's tetracycline used a lot in Brazil in cat food, in animal foods, and so on. So these mosquitoes have used this tetracycline to stay alive. And when they sting human beings, the human beings are getting the Zika virus, where pregnant women are giving birth to babies that have a small head. GMO is having worse effects upon the people. And we need to stop this because, believe it or not, Florida is talking about releasing these same mosquitoes to fight other mosquitoes. And so it could come to America here. And I believe that is important. GMO. I think Monsanto is out of control. Corn, soybeans, GMO. I believe we need to label what foods are GMO. This is about freedom. People have a right to know what they're eating. They have a right to know what's in their food, and they have a right to know if the food was raised free range or not. Privacy. I believe people have a right to be forgotten. When they're surfing the web, they have a right to be forgotten. Economy, 12% flat tax with consideration of a fair tax over a 3-year period. Security, Israel first. We need to get back to the policies back in 1967 where Israel can do better than we can in taking care of the Middle East. I believe that's most important, and I believe the Republican Party needs to look in the mirror and start to use a proportional election of delegates.
David, closing comments?
I am David Gerson, and you know me because I have been fighting alongside you in the trenches for 3 years. You know me because you've come to one of my dozens of town hall meetings and you've looked me in the eyes and you've asked me the difficult questions. You know me because you've heard me on Up and Adam explain how the Republicans should have defunded Planned Parenthood and forced Obama to justify why he shut down the government. You know me because you heard me on At Issue with Tom Hauser define our true opponent, the Washington cartel. You know that my cause is building this grassroots movement because Washington is only going to change from pressure from the outside when the people stand up and hold their representative accountable. You have seen me fight the fight that no one else will fight. You have heard me speak the difficult truths that needed to be said. And what I am most proud of over this 3-year journey is I have earned the trust of this community, and together we are setting brush fires of freedom in the minds of men across this district, and we are going to inspire this nation with what a group of concerned citizens can accomplish. I am David Gerson, and I am going to Congress to represent us. We, the people, no longer accept the status quo. We have stood up against the Goliaths in Washington, and we are going to take our country back.
John, closing comments, 3 minutes.
Well, thank you all for being here. I just met Gene tonight. I'm glad he wasn't Sam Kinison and I didn't hear a bunch of screaming. I hope this election comes down to integrity and character. I know Jason likes to attack me. That's great. When we had the government shutdown, I donated my paychecks to the food shelves in Wabasha County, Goodhue County, and Winona County, the counties that I represented. And I can show the canceled checks. But, it's one thing to say something and do another. Jason walked off his radio show, treated everybody like they're unintelligent, said, I'm out of the system. I'm no longer going to participate. Well, now he's back looking for a job. And he says he does all these things for Republican causes. It's because he lines his back pocket. If he really wanted to help the Republican Party, maybe he should run against Betty McCollum in his own district instead of carpetbagging in this district. I'm going to tell you that's going to be a huge general election liability for our CD. We can't afford to put that at risk. Thomas Jefferson wrote that the care of human life and happiness, and not their destruction, shall be the first and only object of good government. Let me repeat that. The care of human life and happiness, and not their destruction, shall be the first and only object of good government. Now, I have a record of reducing taxes. I have a record of standing on. I'm very passionate about the debt issue. I think it's going to pull our country underwater if we don't address it. I'm sincere about that effort. Most of my life has been spent building a business and raising a family. That's my greatest accomplishment. I encourage you to go to my website, howforcongress.com. You can shorten it up and just go to johnhowe.us. But I need your support. We need to put forth the most electable conservative in CD2. I am that person. I'm going to work very hard to win your endorsement. If I haven't called you yet, I will be calling you. And if you don't want to wait for that phone call, you can call me. My number is 651-278-4693. Thank you so much for coming here tonight. Be safe on your way home, and God bless America.
Okay, with that concludes our debate for this evening. We had other excellent questions on the tax code and a number of other issues. Unfortunately, due to time, we weren't able to get to them. I'm sure the candidates, if you have a specific question, will be glad to visit with you and answer those questions. And at this point, I'll turn it back over to Jeff.
Sure. First off, I want to thank all the candidates for coming. Let's give them a round of applause. I want to thank all of you for coming tonight. It means a lot to us. We didn't really know what to expect when we started this little venture out. We didn't know if we'd have 5 people show up, the same few that showed up, but at the BPOU meetings, but it means a lot to us that y'all ventured out here. I want to thank Glenn a lot for moderating the debate. We kind of threw him out to the wind here a little bit, and I think he did a good job. And Emily, thank you too. We got to vacate out of here, but hopefully the candidates will stick around out by their tables here for a little bit, and if you got some questions for them. But I just, the ballots. Right. Everybody should have gotten one of these. David Benson-Staebler was not here tonight, obviously, so if you want to write Gene's name in there instead, there's a bucket on the table where you walked in. If you would please drop them in there. We're going to tabulate the results, and we're going to post them on the Goodhue County Republican website. That's gcgop.us. I don't know if we'll get it done tonight, but maybe tomorrow or so we'll have those results posted. And I would just like to ask you to work hard for these candidates, donate some money if you can, and make sure we have a good election result this fall. Thanks for coming.